In this activity, we're going to look at how you can solve equations of lines by graphing. And the first thing that we're going to do is recall that there are three methods that you can graph a linear relationship by hand, and that means by not using technology. First of all, you can set up a table of values, and if you're given any linear relation such as y equals 3x minus 2, you would sub in various values of x and determine what each value of y is. For example, you could sub in x equals 0. So 3 times 0 is 0, minus 2 is negative 2. So then if x is 0, y is negative 2. So we will put a point at 0, negative 2 on your graph and sub in other values of x. Another way that we can graph a linear relationship is by using the slope and y-intercept method. And if you recall, if you're given the equation y equals 2x plus 4, you sub in, you put a point at 4 on the y-axis because 4 is the y-intercept, and you would then draw a line through the point 0,4 that has a slope of 2 because in y equals mx plus b, the slope of this line is 2. Another way that we can graph is by finding the x and the y-intercept. And so if you're given an equation like 3x minus 4y equals 12, you would sub in for x equals 0 and then determine what y is. And so you would have a point then on the y-axis that would be your y-intercept. Then you would sub in for y equals 0 and you would determine what the x value is, and that would be your x-intercept. So once you had those 2 points, you would draw a line through. So that's how you would graph the three different ways. We can also graph using technology such as a graphing calculator or Geometry Sketchpad. And we're going to use Geometry Sketchpad in a little bit. So once your equations are graphed, you can use the graph to interpret the situation. And if you're given a real life situation, sometimes you have to determine which is better under certain circumstances. So if we're solving linear systems, then a linear system is two or more linear equations that are being graphed, in other words, being put on the same grid. So if we're given x minus 3y plus 9 equals 0, and 2x minus y equals 2. The reason that this is a linear system is because we have two linear equations. And a system then is two or more linear equations on the same graph. So a graphical representation is often used to provide information about both these two linear relations. So example, if you have our two linear equations graphed on the same grid, you'll notice that there is a point where the two meet, and this is called the solution. And it's the point where the x and the y value, the ordered pair, satisfies both equations. In other words, if you sub in x equals 3 and y equals 4 to both of these equations, you get left side equals right side, and that's the only situation that that's going to occur. So here, our solution then is at the point 3, 4. So again, if you sub in x equals 3 and y equals 4 into both of these equations, you're going to find that left side equals right side, and so that we say that it satisfies both equations. So we can use graphing in order to determine a nice visual representation of that graph, of that linear system. Now the problem is, if we require an exact solution, if this is not right on a point on the grid, then what we might have trouble seeing is what the exact answer is, and sometimes we need that, so we're going to have to use different methods of solving linear systems, which we'll do in later activities. So we're going to look at a real-life example to show exactly how a linear system graphed can make us make an informed choice. And Chad is renting a car when he's on a trip to Burlington, and he has two options to choose from. First of all, he can go to Carson's Cars, which charges $25 a day plus 30 cents per kilometer. He can also go to Rent to Drive, which charges $30 per day plus 20 cents per kilometer. So what we're going to do is decide here which company Chad should use. And what Chad is going to do, first of all, is graph this using technology. And in order to do that, we're going to need two equations in order to put into Geometry Sketchpad here, or you can use a graphing calculator, in order to determine which one Chad should use. So we got to set up an equation that we can put into our technology. And Carson's Cars, remember, charges $25 plus 30 cents per kilometer, which we're going to say is $25 plus 30 cents per kilometer. And our equation then is cost is equal to 25 plus 0.3K. And here, C represents the cost of renting the car, and K represents the cost per kilometer for rent when you drive the car. So rent to drive, now they charge $30 per day plus 20 cents per kilometer. And so when we write our equation for rent to drive, it's going to be C is equal to 30, which is the flat rate fee, $30 per day, plus 0.2 times K, which is 20 cents per the number of kilometers driven. So what you're going to do is open up Geometry Sketchpad. So we're going to graph these using Geometry Sketchpad. And the first thing you should notice is that the y-intercepts here are going to be 25 and 30. And this is right off of our grid. So what we're going to do is drag this down a bit and shorten up our scale so that we have our intercepts showing on our grid. And then what we're going to do is plot the functions. And remember that for Geometry Sketchpad, we're going to click on Plot New Function. So graph, plot new function, and we're going to put in our equation. So our first equation is 25 plus 0.3, and instead of K, because we don't have a choice of K here, we're going to put X, and then we're going to click OK. And you get a graph of, this is 25 plus 0.3K, which is f of x is 25 plus 0.3 times x. So that's what that means. And so now what you're going to do is plot the second function, which is going to be, again, graph, plot new function, and this time it's going to be g of x, which is our second function. So it's going to be 30 plus, and it's going to be 0.2 times x, and click OK. And so what I'd like you to do is open up Geometry Sketchpad and do what I've just done, and then try and make a decision as to which company Chad should choose.